And that's when I met like these kids that the whole family was like homeschooled, right?
You come and you're like, honey, I was thinking, why don't you just homeschool? I even said like, how could I stay with my kids all day? My kids are gonna drive me crazy. And after you told me, you're like, why are you gonna want kids then if you can't even stay with your kids?
And I can feel the sun on my skin.
Today, my husband is going to be joining me. Okay guys, my husband is here. Ultimately, like, he's the one who kind of put that idea in my head about homeschooling, and I wanted him here. I have a couple of questions for him and just for us to tell our story. It's going to be very much like us sitting down, telling you our story, and hopefully it can inspire you if you have a partner that doesn't want to homeschool or is hesitant to homeschool. Maybe this can help you out. And in this situation, I was the one who was hesitant to homeschool, and then he's the one who wanted to homeschool. But I know that in a lot of cases, it's the other way around as well. But regardless, I feel like this could help you in your, your journey towards homeschooling. So because my husband is very shy on camera, I thought this would be like a good way for you to kind of, loosen up, is that you tell the people to subscribe.
All right, guys, so don't forget to like the video and subscribe, as you're gonna get lots of wonderful content from my wonderful wife. So don't forget to subscribe.
Okay, so before we start about like homeschooling in general, what was your views on homeschooling before we even thought about homeschooling, or even you thought about it? Because I think, did you ever think that you would homeschool your kids, like your kids would be homeschooled? Or when did that thought come to you?
Well, I don't know if you told him the story of Nicholas, how he came about.
How did he come about? I don't know the
we didn't
story.
Plan Nicholas.
Oh yes, okay.
Basically.
We didn't plan Nicholas. No, it wasn't a planned pregnancy for sure. But we were married.
Until that point, I never really put too much thought into like what kind of education I wanted for my kids, because I wasn't yet planning on having kids. But since I found out that Regina was pregnant, then that I started putting more thought into that, like how our life was gonna look like, right?
Right.
I had some ideas in my head, but I didn't really know how that was gonna come about.
Right.
And at that point, I don't think homeschooling was really strong in there. But yeah, the idea came a little bit later. When we started dating, I told her right away that my plan was to eventually move into the country, because I always knew that the lifestyle in the country, even for raising children, the best setting you could put your children would be in the country. Not saying that whoever does it in the city is bad and whatever, but I'm just saying if you're going for what's best for them, for their mental health and for just a bunch of different reasons. I read it in well, maybe list the book down below so that people can read this Christian writer that talks about the benefits of living and raising your children in the country. So it convinced me back then. So even before I had kids, I already knew that when I had kids, I was gonna strive for that.
Right. Like when did it hit you that you were like, okay, maybe I should talk to
Regina
about homeschooling?
Since I had that idea of living in the country, there was our church was promoting an event, like a camp meeting, where I met a bunch of people that were living in the country, so I could try to talk to them and get some ideas and to see if it was possible for us to do it, because we were living in the city, and so we didn't really know how to go about it. We didn't have any experience on it, so I went to this camp meeting trying to get more ideas and information about it. And that's when I met like these kids that the whole family was like homeschooled, right? And I also had like some questions, and I talked to him. The young man was around 16 or 17 years old at the time, so I was able to talk to him and say, oh wow, this homeschool people are actually, very social. And because back then I had that idea of also that homeschool kids are more shy or this and that.
Antisocial, right?
So they can be. I mean, everyone has their different personalities, but it kind of opened my mind that, and he told me also that he could go to college or university, whatever he wanted here in Canada. So I'm like, oh wow, it's not that hard to transition from homeschool to university or college. So
And he was thriving, right? He was like,
he was pretty good. I think he started college or university even younger than other kids, right?
And life skills, right? Like you just saw like...
And they talked about homeschool also there, the importance and the benefits, right?
Family, right? Or parents educating their kids.
So that's the first seed. Because I guess the Holy Spirit works in our lives in like slowly, right? It's not always like a light switch. So it's small impressions here and there. I would say that was one of them. I probably had others in the past that I don't remember, but that was one that I remember right now. And also after, I don't remember if you remember that speaker, Scott Ritsema. He's a very good person that talks about the school system and homeschooling and indoctrination in the schools and stuff like that. Also put a link for his channel down below.
So all the links will be down below.
You guys can check it out. And he also talks about like what was behind the idea of the people that created the school system, right? That started hundreds of years ago, and how back then everybody used to be homeschooled, right? Just when like you went to university or college, you would actually go to a school. But everybody used to be homeschooled before, a few hundred years ago, and then the system came about. And I saw how it kind of takes away from the parent the privilege of educating their child and putting values into the children. So that's what I thought was important for us, especially seeing everything that was going on around
the world. Yeah, it's a lot. And then, so what happened? Like, when did you like think like, oh man, I'm gonna tell Regina? Because I know you've told me a couple of times here and there, like, you know, I met that homeschool family, but it never was like kind of like, oh, we should homeschool, right? So I remember the time that you did. I think you lightly mentioned it here and there, and I just kind of brushed it off. But the first moment that I remember that you mentioned it to me that, you know, maybe we should try this homeschooling thing, is when I was pregnant with Michael. I remember it was very, very like, it was like winter, like a lot of snow outside. I was getting Nicholas ready to go to school, and we were thinking already about moving into the country. And you told me, you were like, honey, because you're just there in the morning. I'm stressed out getting the lunch ready. If you've ever, you know, been part of like public school and drop-offs, the mornings are very, very stressful. So I'm like, I'm late and I'm putting the kids, like the stuff away. I'm heavily pregnant. And you come and you're like, honey, I was thinking, since you wanna, you know, you don't wanna stay home with the kids and, you know, we're gonna move into the country, why don't you just homeschool? And then I looked at you and I'm like, is he joking? Like, is this a joke? And I was really mean to you. Do you remember? Like,
no.
No, it's good he doesn't have a good memory.
Forgive easily. Don't remember.
Yeah, you do forgive easily. And you have a really bad memory. But I was very upset to the point where I told him, my kids be homeschooled, they're gonna be antisocial. I listed all the things that, you know, usually people list when they say, you know, homeschool. I was like, I worked so hard to get my career. I started from the bottom and I worked so hard to have a good salary to like provide for our family. And I'm here thinking like, I wanna be at home anyway. So these are just like, it's silly excuses. Like I was giving silly excuses and things that I didn't even believe in, but just because I was so upset that you actually said the H word, which is homeschool, and to kind of like take away my, you know, my vision of like being in the country. To me, it was, I was gonna be home, I was gonna be cleaning, cooking, you know, welcoming the husband home. I think at the
time you planned to continue working.
I know, I was going to, but eventually I think after we had all our kids, I think in my mind, like in my vision, you know, my dream.
I don't know about that.
You don't know about that dream? But in my vision, I would be a stay-at-home mom taking care of my kids, and my kids would be going to school.
So basically like how you were raised.
How I was raised, my mom was always there for us, and I see the benefits of that. Even though my mom didn't homeschool us, I see the benefit. I always told you that. My mom was always there for us no matter what. We were sick, we had to stay home from school. We got back from school, my mom was always there, and that was very important for us. Like, I feel like that was what brought us together, and we are so thankful for that. But anyways, I even said like, how could I stay with my kids all day? Like, my kids are gonna drive me crazy. And after you told me, and that made me very upset. You're like, why are you gonna want kids then if you can't even stay with your kids? You told me.
Oh, yeah?
You told me that. And after, I was like, and in my head I was like, how dare he say that? First of all, I used to be that person that used to say, I could never stay with my kids full time. because they would drive me crazy. But that sounds so bad if you think of it, like really think of it. The reasons that people give is that my kids would drive me crazy. But you know what? I was so stressed with life in general, with work, that I thought it in a way that I'm already so stressed with my kids right now. Imagine staying with them full time, but your life changes, right?
You don't have the stress of your full-time job.
Exactly.
Obviously, because sometimes you take the stress from your job and you take it out on your kids.
But there are
family, right?
But there are some families that both people do work, you know, so it's not easy. But it's almost like it's a change in mindset, right? That's what society tells us. Society tells us you don't want to stay with your kids. You don't want to raise your kids. And then what happened after that? Like after I said my piece and said, no,
like once
crazy.
I got the idea that you weren't really open to the idea, then and I knew, like, especially for our family, seeing everything that was going on at the schools with the ideas that did not align with our values. So I thought, wow, if our kids are exposed to that, like, it's gonna be hard for us to shape them into what we believe to be good values. So I knew that God wanted us to do what's best for our kids. In my mind, I thought that was God's will for us to be able to give our kids a proper education, like with the values that we learn from the Bible. I started praying, right, on a way for the Holy Spirit to work in Regina's mind and heart, just like the Holy Spirit worked in my life, because I know that sometimes we try to convince people of things, but if it's God's will, it's not our job to convince. Like, it's our job to tell them and to pray for them. Obviously tell them in a loving manner and continue to pray. And I'm not the type of person that likes getting into arguments a lot.
No, you don't. I like arguing, you don't.
So, like, I talk about it and then I leave it alone. I give time for the Holy Spirit to work. I pray.
Right.
I prayed about it, right? And yeah, so
And then what happened? All of a
then
sudden.
after also I started telling you, like, every time I would see something on the news about schools that in my mind was really bad, I would show it to Regina. I was like, look what they're doing in the schools right now with the kids, you know?
And I'm like, oh no.
Trying to show her the bad things going on so that she would see how the kids might benefit from being homeschooled,
Right.
and not being exposed to that sort of garbage out there.
Yeah. And also, once you were showing me these things and whatnot, I was okay, I'm gonna try to look for a private school, right? I was trying to look for private schools out here in the country, but then it's very expensive. And we wanted to be in one income. Like, we wanted to change our lives. We wanted to, moving into the country was meaning more family time, more time with our kids, not only for me, but for you as well. That was one of our goals, right? And because it's expensive, it's $1,000 or more a month to be in private school. And yes, Nicholas was in private school. He was one kid. We both were working in the city. That's completely different. Our lives were going to change in all aspects, right? So I was looking at different private schools, but everything was just not feeling right. And then I don't know what, but I started researching about homeschooling. I think it was the Holy Spirit putting things in my heart, right? And maybe putting things on my phone as well, because things were popping up. And maybe because we're talking about it, because we know the phone. Google is always listening. And hey, the Holy Spirit will use Google that way. And I started just researching about homeschooling, and I just thought it was just way too easy, because in Ontario, Canada, there is nothing that you have to do. Like, in the sense of, like, what am I supposed to do to homeschool my kids? And I was like, what? Like, this is what I always used to tell you. I'm like trying to find something that I have to do, and there's like nothing, right? So it's a very easy province to homeschool your kids in. It could be a pro and a con for some people. Some people want, hand holding. I think us in our mind is more like, let's give us the freedom, right? You're not interrupting with our homeschooling. We prefer that way. But anyways, I started looking at it and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try this homeschool thing, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I was gonna ask you, did you decide to do it, or did you say, I want to try it?
It was more of I wanted to try it.
Exactly. So it's not like
I wanted to try it.
You can always just try it and see how it goes for you and your family, right?
Exactly.
It's not like once you start homeschooling, you can never go back to the school. I think you can always transition, no?
Of course you can. I feel like sometimes people think that if you try it, and I guess maybe if you fail, like I think people are scared of failing, I think, right? I think that was my fear too. Like one of my fears was kind of like, what if I fail? What if I'm not able to do it? But I came in the mindset that I'm like, okay, God, just guide me, And I cried a lot the first year. It was very like stressful for me because you're kind of in that deschooling. I don't know if you know what deschooling is. It's just kind of taking the public school system out of your mindset on how things are supposed to be done. Because once you start homeschooling, you see that this is a lifestyle and it's a way that's completely different from the public school system, right?
Well, you're the professional or the expert on homeschooling,
Not really, but okay.
I'm not sure. Like, there's different methods of homeschooling.
There is,
too,
there is, and that was like kind of like, what is my way of homeschooling? A lot of people sometimes would tell me, oh no, your kid's in kindergarten, don't do anything, they'll learn, and that would kind of freak me out, right? Because I'm like, okay, I know what you're saying, but I'm still worried, you know? But it's almost like you have to find yourself and the way that you do things. And because there's so many different methods and some things work for some families and don't work for other families, it's kind of that first year is kind of like you finding yourself. You learning alongside your child and learning what your child, how your child, you know, learns and how you teach as well, right? What would be your advice for someone who has like a partner that doesn't want to homeschool? Usually it's the mom that wants to homeschool and the husband doesn't, you know, that's the common one, I think. But ours was kind of like the opposite way around. Like, what would be your advice for someone?
I would say pray for the person, pray for God to give you wisdom to talk to the person. And then I would say don't ambush the person, but slowly.
You never ambushed me. You never ambushed me. There's just
like
once.
Slowly,
that was just like the one time that we got in an argument about it. But well, I got
slowly show the person like why, like in your head, you know why you want to do it, but try to convince the person that to show the person why you want to do it and why it's best, right? And you show your husband, oh look, so much things going on with.
Just like you kind of
vice
showed
versa,
me.
and also
yeah,
like you show them like what's going
Facts.
on that you think might be bad for your kids to be exposed to that, for example, right? And I know like we won't be able to shelter our kids forever from these things, but at least it gives them time to mature enough so that they don't make a bad decision, because sometimes kids can be influenced and they don't have the maturity to make the right decision at the time. Just like when you have a baby, you don't let the kid put the finger in the plug. Some people are like, oh, just let them learn, but there are limits, like and as your kids grow up, then you say, okay, fine, you're old enough, like if you want to try that, then you're gonna get hurt, but you know when it's the right time to allow them to make the mistake. Like you try to show the person the problems, let's say in the schools, and then to show them that there is a solution, that if you can make it work, like homeschooling, it would be better for the well-being of the children, because at the end of the day, we assume that the father or the mother wants what's best for their kids. So try to show them why you think it's best for them to have a homeschool.
And like we said, like it's a trial, right? And I think that once you try it and then your partner sees the benefits and I think that they'll be like, oh, wow, like I'm so happy that we tried this, right? Like
yeah, and also like a big problem probably might be like 2 incomes, right? Because that's a big one for most people. So
what did we
so try to come up with a solution beforehand, like, oh, we're gonna be tight, maybe we'll cut back on these things, we won't do this, we'll try to save here. I mean,
we moved, you know? Right? We moved into the country. We moved.
And it's not saying it's easy, right?
Yeah, it's not.
But you gotta realize some people don't like the word sacrifice, but I would say you gotta choose your priorities, right? If the well-being of your children should be the priority of any parent. So, you know, maybe buying expensive cars, or, you know, wasting money on things that you can cut back for now, at least until your kids are old enough. And then if you have to put them in school, at least they're mature enough that they'll be able to say no to certain things and to, you know,
have those
to
values,
make better
right?
decisions.
And you've homeschooled the kids full time. Like there was a point where I was working full time. You were just doing some side stuff just because of the whole pandemic. And what would you say the hardest struggle was when you were full time with the kids? And also, what was the like pros and cons? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's not sugarcoat everything, because we think that everything is fine and dandy. You see stuff on YouTube, right? In social media, it's amazing. But we know that everything has its struggles, right? And you were with the kids full time, so you saw that it's not easy. It's not rainbows and sunshine, especially when you have littles, right? You were with Lily when she was like, she was 1, right? Like she was very, very young. So what would you say that was your hardest struggle? I'm putting him in the spot here. I didn't ask him these questions. What would you say was like your biggest struggle? Be honest, it's okay.
Yeah, having a little one it's a struggle, because like when you're For example, I was trying to do some work with Nicholas, and then Michael would start, you know, interrupting, crying, trying to grab stuff. That's a challenge. But also, like, I wasn't 100% in charge of the curriculum.
And I wanted to be very involved too.
With little kids, it's hard because they don't always live up to your expectations. Maybe you have too high expectations for little kids, so you shouldn't.
My husband was trying to do the garden, and he had like this expectation, like this beautiful picture in your mind, right?
Like we're gonna start our seedlings inside, indoors, and you know, it's a mess. And
yeah, it's really.
But I guess it's part of it. Right?
Yeah, I think it's us too and our expectations too, right? How we think that everything's gonna be picture perfect, right? And it's gonna be hard, especially with littles. I think as the kids get older, it's a little bit easier for us to do those fun things like science experiments, and like do like the garden. They actually help in the garden instead of like. And
I mean, I would say we're still in the beginning of our learning experience. Yes. So we're sharing what we learned so far, but we know there's still lots to learn. Okay,
and the last questions. Okay, how can dads get more involved and help homeschool moms? So like you as my partner, you know that it's not easy. Like we're staying with the kids 24/7. Mm-hmm. What would be your advice for, you know, a partner that was, you know, watching this video right now and they had a homeschool mom that, you know, was full-time with the kids or whatnot? What would be your advice that you could be a little bit more, like what are some things that you do to help out?
Yeah, it depends, right? Because I know some people that work out there get home pretty tired. Mm-hmm. But if you can, try to, you know, take over, give the mom a bit of free time, you know. So maybe give the kids a bath and do what you can to take off the load.
Right. Help with like the household chores, like, right? Like you're really good at doing that.
Yeah, just do what you can because since being exposed to staying with the kids full time, I know how demanding children can be, so.
You even said it's easier to work than actually stay with the kids.
Yeah, actually I prefer doing construction than
it's hard. It's almost like
different gifts, right?
Yeah, it's hard though because like it's I think it's one of the hardest jobs, most rewarding job out there, you know, because you're seeing your kids grow up and seeing them do certain tasks and skills and being like, wow, like, you know, they're flourishing, right? But it's very hard too. It's not easy, but I think the reward, right, at the end is what really helps, right?
Not that I prefer construction, it's just, it's easier to work outside than sometimes to homeschool.
Mentally too, right? Because you have that kind of mental break.
When it comes to the school part, how many hours really does it take?
It's not very, especially with my kids because they're younger, it's not as, like Michael, 30, 45 minutes. Lily, we do our little one-on-one, like, you know, the little kits and stuff like that. And then Nicholas, he's becoming more independent, right? As they get older, they become more independent. So it's not even the homeschooling part, it's managing all of the things, right? That's kind of hard, but having a partner that understands the struggle, like I can come to you and I can be like, babes, like I'm having a hard day. I've done that to you before. And I said, I'm having a really hard day and the house is a mess right now. And I even said one time to you, I'm so sorry. And you're like, whatever. Like it's almost like saying that, you know, you understand what I'm going through and I can depend on you with my mental load, you know? And you kind of, like, you told me that day, I still remember this day, you're like, go take a nap. Don't worry, I got this. And you started getting the kids all ready and I took a couple of hours to sleep. That to me was huge because mentally I was already kind of upset that I didn't get everything done, but you understood. So understanding, you know, sometimes we don't even need anything. We just need understanding, you know, that you know what's going on.
Yeah, so for wives that are having trouble for the husband to help out, maybe understand how demanding it is, maybe, you know, plan a day and say, okay, this day you're gonna stay the day with the kids and you take off and come back in the end of the day and then they'll give them a better understanding of what it feels like, right? Yeah. So you gotta make sure he's by himself the whole day with the kids.
Meal prepping, everything, right? The whole thing.
And hopefully they'll understand better.
Yeah. That's the way. Anyways, thank you so much for coming on my channel.
You're welcome.
It's so awesome.
Nice seeing you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. I hope that it has brought you some type of encouragement. If you want to see my husband more often, you know, let us know down below. Don't. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Okay, guys, my husband is here.
Hi, guys.
And now you're telling me I started from the bottom and then now, like, from here. Okay. Okay.
One of us arguing.
Okay. How does that look like?
No, I don't want to go end up in jail for this.
I have this like in my head, like, you know, like a Vogue kind of photo shoot.